all these iconic characters in one place. I can't believe Sakurai was able to pull it off.
Yep, he even managed to snatch up Simon Belmont from Konami and actually do something with him.
It's crazy to think that even more characters are on the way. I wonder who they're going to add next.
Well, you know, if he can get Simon in, then my boy Goemon is definitely in.
Goemon? No way, he's not popular enough in the West. Now Chrono, on the other hand.
If they're going to add anyone meaningful to the game, then they should add Bonk.
Bonk? Oh man, Bonk, sure. Come on, Marsh, Bonk, that fat-headed freak. What rat it? One has put Bubsy in the game as well.
Don't you dare compare Bonk to that turd of a mascot Bubsy. Oh, come on! Let's not forget about Mega Man's awful Western box art, shall we?
Difference is, Marsh, Mega Man's actually popular.
Oh, don't worry, Marsh. We've always got the Mii fighters.
I'll show you guys. You'll regret the day you ever made fun of Bonk!
So, what have you got against Bubsy?
It's a sad state of affairs when people don't fully appreciate Bonk and his prehistoric misadventures. You might think of him as a failure trying to mooch off the success of other video game mascots, but I'm here to set you straight, with a review of the caveman's first adventure, PC Genjin.
PC what, you're probably thinking? Well, the truth is, before Bonk made it over to the West on the TurboGrafx 16, he actually went by the name PC Genjin. Still confused? Well, this was a frankly hilarious pun on the name of the Japanese gaming system, the PC Engine, with the word Genjin meaning primitive man in Japanese, aka a bloody caveman. Brilliant. Even the letters PC weren't meaningless, standing for Pithecanthropus Computerus, which is an obvious play on the name of what was thought to be the missing link between apes and humans, Pithecanthropus erectus. With this much thought put into the name alone, you know the game's gonna be good. Before he even appeared in a game, he was featured in the monthly magazine Gekken PC Engine, as a cartoon strip made to promote NEC and Hudson Soft's new 8-bit console. People in Japan immediately fell in love with the little guy, and he soon became the console's official mascot. He was often referred to as PC Kid from time to time, and this name was later adapted for Europe as BC Kid. Much better name than Bonk if you ask me, and probably should have been his name in the West from the get-go. Ah well.
It's crazy to think that Bonk was a console mascot before even Sonic was a household name. And it's a real shame that the character's fallen into obscurity these days, because his games are really good. He wasn't trying to copy the likes of Mario or any other platformers of the time, instead bringing a bunch of his own ideas to the platforming table.
Before we go any further, can we just stop and appreciate how great this box art is? It's just so fucking adorable. It's got this whole collage motif going on with the cardboard cutouts, magazine clippings, and biscuits? Way better than whatever this was. God, I love these hue cards. It's crazy to think a game as good as Bonk is stored on this tiny little thing. PC Genjin released in Japan in December of 1989 and was co-developed by Red Company and Atlas. When you first boot up the game, Bonk's there to greet you, asleep on his own logo. Nice. Once you press the run button though, the little guy wakes up and sets off on his own adventure to rescue Princess R from the evil King K. Rool. King Drool, sorry. So as Bonk, your main method of attack is to quite literally use your head. With a simple tap of the attack button, Bonk bashes enemies around with his thick Neanderthal skull. No matter how much you might want to follow in the footsteps of many other popular platformers, jumping on enemies' heads just isn't going to get you anywhere in this game. Instead, while in the air, you can spin Bonk around and dive bomb into enemies with a savage aerial headbutt. If you miss your target and land headfirst into the ground, you'll be temporarily stunned though, so make sure to land on your feet when you can. If you're good enough, you can chain bounce off of enemies indefinitely, and it feels so satisfying to continuously bounce over a long row of baddies like this. You can even do this on the bosses. His mid-air spin animation also slows your full speed too, helping you make some long jumps and get to hidden areas. You can really break the game though with this mechanic if you use the turbo switch on the controller, skipping past large areas entirely. Attacking enemies from below is another great way of taking them out. This comes in real handy for some of the airborne fiends like the Stu Stingers and Gary Geeks. Bonk's no one-hit wonder though, and like any good hero, he has a diverse range of other badass moves. There are waterfalls that you can majestically jump up like a feisty salmon, vines and tree trunks that you can climb and swing from, and if you see a vertical wall, you can probably climb it using your teeth? As you journey through Bonk's prehistoric world, you'll visit dense jungles, murky swamps, and frozen tundras. But the game also takes you to some rather bizarre locations too. There's one part in the game where you get eaten by a dinosaur and have to fight your way through its insides, dodging pools of stomach acid and killing giant parasites on the way. The finale of the game even takes you to the bloody moon. The game offers 7 worlds in total, each one ending in a boss fight, some of which are a little strange to say the least. Speaking of enemies, there's a wide variety of Jurassic foes to beat around, from dinosaurs to insects, all with equally dumb sounding names like Al-E-Gator and Andy Ammonite. Stages in Bonk are handled a bit differently than your average platformer. Instead of jumping over bottomless pits and making it to the end of the stage within a specific time limit like your Marios, levels are designed more about skillfully dispatching enemies and making it to the end without losing too much of your health, as it doesn't replenish between stages. Scattered throughout the world's wage you are flowers, which you can jump on and will usually give you food to replenish your health with. But be careful though, as some of these flowers are actually hidden enemies in disguise. You can tell them apart by watching their idle animations, but I'd often forget they were even a thing and they'd catch me by surprise, the sneaky buggers. As a rare treat, you might come across some green flowers that will grant you with an extra heart container. Unfortunately, this isn't a permanent thing, and you'll lose it if you end up having to use a continue. Fittingly for a growing cave lad, deliciously chunky pieces of meat are your power-ups in this game. If you eat one of the small pieces of meat, Bonk's attack power triples, and your aerial headbutt attacks will stun nearby enemies. This powered up form only lasts for a short amount of time, and you'll lose it if you get hit, but if you happen to come across another small piece of meat whilst already powered up, you'll gain temporary invincibility, allowing you to plow through enemies, much like Mario does once he's touched a superstar. Occasionally you'll come across large pieces of meat which will take you straight to the invincible form, but they're harder to find. I've got to say, I really dig the animation of Bonk when he's powered up like this, a real force to be reckoned with. One really unique thing about this game is that when you lose all your health and die, instead of going back to the start of the level or continuing from a checkpoint, you can revive yourself at the cost of a life and carry on like nothing happened. I really like this mechanic a lot, as you're not having to constantly replay previous sections of the game you've already gone through. If you do happen to lose all your lives though, and you game over, you have unlimited continues that start you back at the beginning of the current world you're on, the exception being the longer worlds which usually have a checkpoint about halfway, so it's not too punishing. It's not all simple though. Many secrets are waiting to be found within each level. Breaking down certain walls with your head can lead to healing items, lives, and sometimes even a bonus room. The bonus stages are plentiful in this game, and provide you with a wide variety of different and quite fun challenges. These can range from smacking volcanic rocks spewing out of a volcano, climbing up a vertical cliff face as fast as possible, or my personal favourite, seeing how many times you can use your air spin before you hit the ground. Just make sure you land the right way up.
So you've heard me go on about how the game plays differently from other platformers, but is it just different, or is it actually fun too?
As fun as it is smashing your enemies off the screen left, right and centre, I gotta say, something feels a little stiff with the way Bonk controls, and it definitely takes a while to get used to. With the developers putting less emphasis on classic type platforming, I guess they didn't feel the need to add a run button? This, combined with Bonk's slow movement speed and attack lag, really drags the flow of the game down a bit, and it can make it feel clunky and actually more difficult as a result. Jumping at least feels good though, even without a run button. Bonk's got good height in the air and you have nice aerial control, even without the mid-air spin. It's just a shame that the pacing of the game feels a bit off, and I think that giving Bonk a little more agility would have gone a long way to making the entire experience feel better. Despite my initial gripes with the controls though, beating the game didn't give me too much trouble. Most enemies require a specific way to take them down, so once you master their weak points and attack timings, you'll find yourself getting further and further with each continue. That said, there was one enemy that really screwed me over though, the dreaded Crocodile. These fuckers are so hard to avoid due to their massive hitboxes, and they bite you for a whole heart's worth of damage. Get off me, you bastard! When it comes to the bosses, they aren't too bad for the most part, and can be taken out super easily once you figure out how to chain headbutts on them. That said, I did hit a massive difficulty spike towards the end of the game. The final world decided it was time for a boss rush, then threw another boss at me, and only then could I have the final encounter with King Drool. That's 6 bosses on a row you need to beat, all in one continue. If you do game over, you're sent all the way back to the start of the boss rush, and this really took me by surprise, given how easy the game was up until that point. Once I realised there were health power-ups and extra lives hidden within the walls leading up to each fight, I did manage to overcome the challenge. Call me casual, but I like my games to have a fair difficulty curve, and not suddenly drop off a huge difficulty roadblock in front of me at the 11th hour.
Mario Land 2.
When it was all said and done though, I finally clocked this in a little under 5 hours. So it's certainly achievable in a single sitting. There's no password system or anything, but like I said, it's a short adventure, and having to start again from the start isn't the worst thing in the world once you master the levels.
The PC Engine was best known for its vast library of amazing, side-scrolling shooters. So it's nice to see that the hardware was used for something more cartoony and colourful like Bonk. It was one of the best looking platformers at the time, and it still holds up well today, especially when compared to the competition.
For an 8-bit game, the graphical presentation is just outstanding, one of its strengths being the use of large character sprites. Bonk and all his foes are all brought to life here with great detail and expressive animations, and everything Bonk himself does just brings a smile to my face. Whether he's foaming at the mouth, scaling walls with his teeth, or receiving a kiss from Princess Czar, he does it with a personality that I just can't get enough of. The stage's backgrounds are also pretty pleasing to look at. They're not as detailed as the game's sprites, but they still capture the game's Jurassic vibe nicely. The worlds and environments all feel unique and never get repetitive. Some stages even foreshadow the future worlds in the distant background, like Drool's Fortress and the giant moon looming overhead, adding a nice sense of progression and cohesion to everything. Whilst not something I hated, the music was probably the weakest part of the game for me. While I did enjoy the upbeat low-key soundtrack to begin with, it all just sounded a bit too docile and lacked variety by the end of it. I mean, I've certainly heard much worse, but the boss theme for instance, that really overstayed its welcome. I was kinda hoping the final boss fight with King Drool would have its own theme, but sadly, even this fight just used the same boss theme we've heard in every other world. The instrumentation is good and the melodies are fine, I just wish it sounded a bit grander, you know? The ending theme was probably my favourite track in the entire game. It's so peaceful sounding, and really brings forth all the memories of the adventure you and Bonk just shared together.
So there we have it. Bonk's first gaming debut still leaves a big impact on me even to this day. If you're tired of playing the usual mainstream platformers, and you want to try something that plays a little bit differently, has a good sense of humour and personality, has a buttload of dinosaurs in it, and doesn't involve eating mushrooms, then look no further.
But all Pithecanthropus computerorus didn't go extinct just after one adventure, oh no. Bonk went on to star in a whole trilogy of games on the PC Engine, and even got an arcade title. Bonk's adventure got a port to the NES once NEC started to exit the console business, wherein some marketing genius renamed it FC Kid. Get it? Famicom? Anyway, I had a quick go on this version of the game during my review playthrough, and shockingly, it holds up pretty well, despite the less powerful hardware. Hudson themselves did this port, which led to them making a whole new bunch of exclusive games on Nintendo consoles. Bonk got a trilogy of brand new games on the Game Boy, and some sequels on the SNES which were called Super Bonk. The original game even got a remake on the GameCube. Bonk continued to live on as a Hudson character after the PC Engine bowed out of the console race, and he was so popular that he even made cameos in Bomberman.
So, if you want to play any of the Bonk games without having to pay a silly amount of money for a physical copy, you can always play the original trilogy on the Wii U Virtual Console. With Konami now owning the rights to the franchise, it's unlikely that we'll ever see a new game in the series. Unless they really want to scrape the bottom of the barrel for pachinko machine ideas. But a man can always dream, right? Bonk for Smash!